The settlement story of the Americas is much more complicated than we've realized. But now that we have very firm evidence of an Australasian genetic signal.
In 1939, Matthew Sterling arrived in Veracruz, Mexico, to begin a new excavation season at the site of Tres Zapotes. Sterling was searching for clues about a recently identified civilization in Mexico, the Olmec. While Tres Zapotes had already been recognized as an Olmec site, little was known about this mysterious civilization at the time. Scholars had only a tentative consensus about who the Olmec were, with most assuming they were a relatively recent culture that existed alongside the classical Maya during the second half of the first millennium CE. This wasn't an unreasonable conclusion. Remember, this was before carbon dating was available for archaeological use. At the time, the best methods for dating Mesoamerican civilizations were stratigraphy or analyzing the dates inscribed on monuments. Sterling, however, suspected that the Olmec were much older. Unfortunately, he had no concrete evidence to support his theories until a remarkable discovery changed everything. While excavating, Sterling uncovered a broken Olmec stela with a partial date inscription. Although part of the date was missing, he and his wife Marion deduced that the stela's date was September 3rd, 32 BCE, by far the oldest recorded date in Mesoamerica. When their findings were published, instead of celebration, they were met with widespread skepticism. Many of their colleagues dismissed the claim as overly optimistic speculation.
The Olmecs, really, they're characterized by the megalithic stone heads, very unusual features that appear to be native Mexican, Native American.
Insisting the Olmec couldn't possibly date back that far. However, the Sterling's theory didn't remain controversial for long. In the following decades, carbon dating and the discovery of the missing half of the stela by a local farmer confirmed their proposed date. The Sterlings had been right all along. This revelation shocked the academic world. It proved the true antiquity of the Olmec and established them as the first major civilization in Mesoamerica. To understand the roots of Mesoamerican civilization, we must explore its first great culture, the Olmec. Many hallmarks of Mesoamerican culture, such as calendars, ball games, and the Mesoamerican pantheon, originated with the Olmec. Their influence was profound. Before delving into the Maya, Zapotec, Toltecs, or Aztecs, it's essential to examine the Olmec and their contributions to the region's cultural development.
I explored the Olmec mystery in considerable depth.
Could you explain that to people that maybe
in Fingerprints of the Gods? Yes. So it's considered to be the earliest high culture of Central America.
In his podcast with Joe Rogan, Graham Hancock dives into the mystery of the Olmecs, a civilization that, while lesser known to many, was one of the earliest high cultures of Central America. He points out that while people are familiar with the Aztecs and the Maya, the Olmecs came long before them and laid the groundwork for much of what would follow in Mesoamerica. What sets the Olmecs apart are those giant, colossal stone heads, some weighing up to 25 tons. These heads are famous for having features that don't look quite like typical Native American traits, which has led to a lot of speculation. Some have wondered if the Olmecs had connections to other far-off cultures, like those from Africa or Polynesia. Hancock argues that Native American genetics are actually much more complex than we realize, with influences from all over the world. So, it shouldn't be too surprising that the Olmec heads have features that seem unusual. He also talks about the Olmec's use of the feathered serpent symbol, one of the earliest depictions of what would later become Quetzalcoatl, the god of wisdom and civilization in other Mesoamerican cultures.
I had been in the Maya area quite a lot ever since I was a sophomore at Harvard. Something went drastically wrong with these people and with this civilization. This area was abandoned, really, pretty much for hundreds and hundreds, almost 800 years.
One of the more intriguing things Hancock mentions is the man bags that appear in ancient cultures like Sumer and Gobekli Tepe. He suggests these bags could symbolize civilization bringers, people or groups who traveled the world spreading knowledge and culture. He even wonders if the Olmecs might have been part of this larger global network, influencing not just the Americas, but other parts of the world too. Unfortunately, the Olmec left behind no written histories or oral traditions. What we know about them comes entirely from archaeology and the study of later cultures. Despite our knowledge, some basic facts remain elusive, such as the language they spoke or what they called themselves. The name Olmec comes from the Nahuatl word Olmen, meaning rubber people, referring to the region's rubber production, which dates back to Olmec times and continued until European contact. However, Olmec is a name assigned to them by modern scholars. It's not what they would have called themselves. Before the rise of the Olmec civilization, the people of Mesoamerica had only recently begun settling into a sedentary lifestyle. This shift was made possible by the domestication of crops like gourds, squash, beans, avocados, and chilies, but most importantly, maize. Maize, first domesticated in Mexico between 7000 BCE and 6500 BCE, would transform life as it became a staple crop. Its significance to Mesoamericans was so profound that most cultures developed a maize deity. Interestingly, maize was domesticated from the teosinte plant, a tiny grass. The transformation of this modest plant into one of the world's most vital staple crops showcases their incredible agricultural ingenuity. If maize doesn't seem impressive enough, consider this. The Olmec were also the first civilization to have chocolate. So let's take a moment to thank the Olmec for introducing chocolate to the world before diving back into our topic. By the start of the second millennium BCE, civilization in Mesoamerica began to emerge. What's remarkable is how late this development occurred compared to other early civilizations, but once it began, it progressed at an incredible pace. Archaeologist Brian Fagan captures this perfectly. A vast chasm separates the thousands of farming villages scattered throughout Central America in 2000 BCE and the sophisticated civilizations that arose with dramatic suddenness only 1,500 years later. The Olmec epitomized this rapid transformation. From 1700 BCE to the end of the first millennium BCE, they dominated Mesoamerican culture. While primarily based along the Mexican Gulf Coast in modern Veracruz and Tabasco, their influence extended far beyond their territory. The Olmec stood apart by living in large, carefully planned urban settlements, complete with elite residences, workshops, and elaborate tombs. Their most famous city, La Venta, flourished between 900 BCE and 400 BCE. La Venta featured a planned layout with temple mounds surrounding a central plaza, and its centerpiece was the Great Pyramid. Though heavily eroded over millennia, it was originally a rectangular pyramid with stepped sides, resembling those found in later Mesoamerican cities. La Venta wasn't just a city of farmers, although agriculture was central to their way of life. It was an economic and cultural hub, home to merchants, artists, sculptors, priests, and a powerful ruling class. The monumental public works commissioned by the Olmec elite highlight the sophistication of their society. But what exactly did they create? Their art provides the answer. Olmec art is distinctive and instantly recognizable, with their colossal heads being the most iconic. Even if you've never studied the Olmec, chances are you've seen these heads in textbooks or documentaries. These massive sculptures were carved from enormous basalt boulders, sourced from the distant Tuxtla Mountains. Transporting these stones required an incredible feat of human labor, as Mesoamerica lacked draft animals. The effort and organization involved in moving these boulders to their cities and ceremonial centers speak volumes about the complexity of Olmec society. While we don't have definitive proof, it's possible that these sculptures were either dragged overland or transported by balsa rafts along the local rivers. What exactly are these sculptures, though? Most experts agree that these heads likely represent Olmec rulers, as each one is unique and none depict the same individual. Each head is adorned with a helmet or headgear. The heads are notable for their lifelike appearance and broad facial features such as flat noses and full lips. These distinctive traits have led some to suggest that the heads are depictions of Africans, But these ideas have been dismissed by Mesoamerican scholars. To date, 17 heads have been discovered across various Olmec sites. They vary in size, ranging from just under 5 feet to over 11 feet tall, with the largest weighing more than 25 tons. To give you a sense of scale, that's heavier than 2 school buses combined. An interesting fact is that there are several replica Olmec heads displayed across the United States. While the Olmec heads are impressive, they weren't the only colossal sculptures created by the Olmec. They also carved massive stone altars, each one hewn from a single block of basalt weighing over 40 tons. Actually, calling them altars may not be entirely accurate. When these were first uncovered, they were assumed to be altars, but experts now believe these giant blocks were likely thrones for rulers. The reason for this theory is that many of these altars feature carvings of rulers sitting on them. Each throne has a niche showing a figure sitting in a cave, often holding a baby with jaguar features or a rope, sometimes both. In many later Mesoamerican cultures, caves were seen as portals to the supernatural world, adding a powerful layer of meaning to this imagery. Keep that cave symbolism in mind, as it will come up again later. As these monuments show, the Olmec were masters at shaping stone, and this is just the beginning. One of the finest examples of Olmec sculpture is the wrestler, a seated figure captured in a dynamic, realistic pose that's rare in Mesoamerican art. Another significant piece comes from a burial in La Venta. A set of small jade figurines was found arranged around a central figure in a compelling scene. While the exact meaning remains unclear, it certainly sparks the imagination. Is it a depiction of Olmec mythology, a ruler's court, or a moment from the life of the deceased? We don't know, but it's fascinating to consider. Olmec art is one of our best resources for understanding their religion and beliefs. When we examine Olmec art through the lens of later cultures, we can see important religious themes emerging. Take those babies we mentioned earlier. Many are depicted as chubby with jaguar features. This recurring theme in Olmec art has led scholars to refer to these babies as were-jaguars. These are figures in the process of transforming into jaguars. They typically have snarling mouths, upturned lips, and sometimes claws. These images aren't limited to children. There are also depictions of adult transformations, as well as shifts into other animals like birds, sharks, and crocodiles. However, were-jaguars are the most common. They appear in ritual axes and other artifacts crafted from green stone and other materials. Were-jaguars played a significant role in Olmec religion, and it's believed that some of these figures represent shamans undergoing a transformation. Shamanism played a key role in Olmec and later Mesoamerican religions. Shamans aren't exclusive to Mesoamerican culture. Many cultures around the world still have them today. Shamans connect with the spiritual world by using hallucinogens to enter an altered state of consciousness. In this state, Olmec shamans could transform into animal spirits, crossing into the supernatural world, where they could influence events in the physical world. For example, a shaman might seek to affect crop growth or bring rain to support their people. Shamans were highly respected individuals in Olmec society, which is why we see their representation so often in Olmec art. However, some of these were-jaguars also reveal early images of deities that would later appear in Mesoamerican religions. A prime example of this is the La Venta figure. The sculpture depicts a man holding a were-jaguar baby, but what makes it significant are the inscriptions carved into the man's body. Though difficult to discern in the image, there are 4 distinct icons carved into his shoulders and knees. Scholars have pointed out that these icons feature characteristics later associated with Mesoamerican gods. These distinguishing features help identify specific deities that would appear in the future. For instance, on his right shoulder is Zeep-Totec, the god of spring and regeneration, also known as the flayed god. On the left shoulder, there's what is believed to be the fire god, or the fire serpent. On the left knee is the god of death, and on the right knee the feathered serpent, better known as Quetzalcoatl in Aztec culture and Kukulkan in Maya culture. This figure would become an important god in later Mesoamerican religions. The infant in the man's arms is identified as the maize god, based on the decorated band above its head. Lastly, another religious practice that seems to have originated in Olmec culture is bloodletting. At La Venta, an intact tomb was found with a stingray spine and other instruments believed to have been used for bloodletting. Bloodletting or auto-sacrifice became a significant ritual in later Mesoamerican religions. By offering their blood, rulers and priests could communicate with their ancestors, seeking their intercession in the spiritual world. This practice was essential to kingship in the later classical period and will come up again in our discussions. Religion and art weren't the only things the Olmec culture left behind. One of their most significant contributions was their use of the Mesoamerican calendar and the long count. While there's ongoing debate about the exact origins of the Mesoamerican calendar, the Olmec played a crucial role in spreading it throughout Mesoamerica. If you're interested in learning more about the calendar and its importance, we've already discussed it in a previous episode. But I'll just cover the key points here. The calendar was a common feature across nearly all Mesoamerican cultures and formed the foundation of their ceremonial and religious life. This calendar was adopted by the Maya, Mixtec, Aztec, Zapotec, and others. To say it was widespread and influential doesn't quite capture its impact. Additionally, the Olmec developed a written numerical system that allowed them to record dates, which we saw in the example at the start of this episode. This capability enabled the Olmec to do something that no one else could: record their history in writing. This raises another interesting question. When counting is recorded, writing often follows. Did the Olmec follow this pattern and spread writing to other parts of Mesoamerica? This is a subject of much debate. Writing appeared during the late formative period in multiple regions: the Olmec heartland, the Valley of Oaxaca, and the Maya highlands. However, the common ancestor of these scripts remains elusive, and there's little agreement on which came first or who influenced whom. The topic is still open to discussion. During this period, Olmec writing was widespread, with the Epi-Olmec creating detailed monumental inscriptions. The La Mojara stela from Tres Zapotes is one of the best-known examples, showing a figure, likely a ruler, next to a long inscription. Before we wrap up this video, let's touch on one last topic that everyone loves: conspiracy theories. As Mesoamerica's oldest civilization, the Olmec are often at the center of various, shall we say, alternative theories. Some scholars have suggested that Olmec achievements in art came from an outside influence, with Africa being the most commonly proposed origin. Others have speculated about influences from China or Europe. A prominent figure in this debate, Ivan von Sertima, argued that the Olmec colossal heads display African ethnic features, specifically broad noses and full lips, suggesting ancient African contact with Mesoamerica. Among other claims is the idea that Mesoamerican pyramids are derived from the pyramids of Egypt and Nubia. I've read many of these theories, and I can assure you that they're painful to get through. Every Mesoamerican scholar I've encountered agrees that there is no solid evidence supporting these ideas. Experts point out that the features seen on the colossal heads are also found among the indigenous people of Veracruz. They also emphasize that Mesoamerican pyramids have a well-documented evolution that is distinct from the pyramids of Egypt. Additionally, I've yet to find any genetic or linguistic evidence to back up these theories. On a lighter note, I'd like to add a personal observation. If any African or Asian civilization had made contact with the Olmec, how did they arrive in the world's only chocolate-producing region and fail to bring chocolate back to the Old World? Talk about a missed opportunity. Let's get back to the matter at hand. This kind of speculation is part of a broader trend. There's a significant amount of conspiracy theories and pseudoscientific literature out there claiming that certain Native American achievements were influenced by Europeans, Africans, or Asians. At best, these claims stem from poorly conducted research and rushed assumptions, and at worst, they are intentional attempts to undermine Native American accomplishments. Such theories have little credibility and should be dismissed. Suggesting that Old World civilizations might have briefly interacted with America is one thing, but asserting that there was consistent transoceanic contact with the Olmec or any other American civilization is simply unfounded speculation. Setting aside these fringe theories, the Olmec were a remarkably successful civilization that left an indelible mark on Mesoamerica. Olmec-style art is widespread. Not only was it prolific, but it also endured for centuries. Olmec culture lasted over 1,000 years, finally beginning to decline with the abandonment of La Venta around 400 BCE. Some later Olmec sites, most notably Tres Zapotes, persisted for a few more centuries before Olmec culture slowly faded, giving way to newer civilizations that inherited its legacy. So this seems enough for this video. Let us know your thoughts on this in the comments below and subscribe for more.